Welcome to Life, Lessons, and Laughter with your host, Glenn Ambrose.
Hello, everybody. Hello. Welcome. So today I'm going to talk about, I think, what is really our spiritual goal, which is unconditional love. I think I always like looking at the big picture and then kind of using that to zoom in on what I need to be doing in my daily life. So, this as the spiritual shift picks up speed, I think it serves us well to do that, to kind of, because we're constantly changing, right? So it's helpful to every once in a while just take a step back and go, okay, where am I? Where am I going? How am I doing on the path? That type of thing. And of course, working with a life coach can be helpful in that area too, because sometimes we have difficulty identifying all that ourselves. But when I've done that recently, it's as the spiritual shift moves forward, our spiritual journey needs to move forward. Our concepts are getting more grand, more it's more godlike. I mean, that was I kind of laughed a little because that's what was coming through. Is we're becoming more like God. That's kind of our goal, right? So what does that look like? I mean, yeah, okay, we're going to become like God, like that's a pretty big goal, right? So I mean, but we can simplify it and we into our life in particular ways. Yeah, I was just thinking about something that came through like last week as well. It's these concepts that we have and how big they can be, but how simple they are in spirituality, and I think that there can be a confusion between things that are complicated and things that are I don't know if I'm going to think of the other word, but I had it really narrowed down well like last week. But things that are complicated imply that they're different. I'll see if I can find that. I think I took a screenshot of something. Excuse me, just getting over a cold, by the way. So if you hear it in my voice, that's what's happening. So I think a lot of times when we're thinking about big things, we think about that maybe they're too complicated. And that's the beauty of spirituality. Oh, here it is. Yeah. So it's beautiful. I found it. So what I was contemplating was the difference between complicated and complex. So complicated is difficulty, intricacy, or a lack of straightforwardness. The implication is that it requires extra effort or knowledge to understand or solve, often due to the many interacting factors or lack of a clear path to a solution. Okay, so that's complicated. Now, pay attention to the difference between complicated and complex. Complex, many parts or interconnected elements. The implication, not necessarily difficult to understand or solve, but may require careful consideration of the individual components. Okay, so that's kind of, spirituality can be complex. It can be interconnected elements, but it's not necessarily difficult to understand or solve, but it may require careful consideration of the individual components, right? That's very different than complicated. Complicated is difficulty, lack of straightforwardness, that type of thing, right? So, well, and it can have a lack of a clear path to a solution, right? So even though spirituality can be complex, it doesn't mean that it's complicated. So this is why we often say that it's simple but not easy, right? Yeah, it's because it's not complicated. So, which is great, because then we can figure it out. And this is kind of what I'm talking about in this instance. We look at, I'm going to be, I want to be more godlike. Like, huh? Like that's huge. And how would we go about that? What would that look like? So to simplify it and bring it into ways that we can actually practice this is through unconditional love. God is unconditional love. God is love, right? And that's the foundational principle and energy of the entire universe is love. And what kind of love? Well, it's unconditional love. It's not conditional. It's not, if you do this, then I love you. And if you don't, I don't love you. It's, I love you always. I'm always here. I'm always supporting you, if you choose to open to it. But you have free will. And even the very concept of free will implies unconditional love, because the reason we have free will is because of unconditional love. It's because you can't have unconditional love if there are conditions. And if there are conditions, then another way to say that is stripping of free will. Because you can't do what you want. You can't do whatever you want. You have to meet the conditions necessary to achieve the love. Right? So the very fact that we have free will is proof that God is unconditional love. Because he's like, hey, I love you no matter what. And you can choose to do whatever you want. Of course, there's natural consequences to your choices, but you can do whatever you want. So that's the foundation of unconditional love. So for us to be more godlike, to find more joy, to experience more cohesiveness to life, more alignment to our nature and who we're supposed to be and who we want to be. It's how much can we embody and live in and through unconditional love. Right? So that's our big concept. It's a little bit more bite-sized than I'm going to become godlike. Right? We can wrap our brain around it better and go like, okay, I'm going to try to live in unconditional love and be an example of unconditional love and bring unconditional love into this realm. Okay, that's a big enough challenge. That's a big enough goal. So we need to bring that into our day-to-day activities. And I think the problem that we have with the unconditional love is that we think our preferences are really, really important. I've done a podcast on that before. Like, well, I feel this is right. So be like that. But instead of us just being and living our lives the way we want to, as sovereign beings that we truly are, if we believe we are, if we believe that the government and other people have control over us, then they do, because we believe that they do. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not at this place where I can just pretend that the government doesn't have any control over people. It really doesn't, and I understand that. And I understand that spiritually I can get myself to a place where I'm truly a sovereign being, and the government will just start overlooking me or not paying attention to me, or stuff like that, with some of the things that they say that they need to or that they want to enforce upon society. I mean, I can embody it to some degree. There's lots of things that the government or I don't want to harp on the government. It's society in general. There are lots of things that I just choose not to participate in because I don't really believe in it. And then I just live my life that way. And I find out that whatever society's standards are don't get pushed upon me for some reason. For some reason, I just get overlooked in that particular area when I'm in a situation where other people are getting hit by this stuff. I'll just walk by and somebody will have to go to the bathroom by chance or something, and I'll just walk right by and I don't get affected by it. Weird stuff like that. So, I mean, that's a really cool, amazing, true sovereign being mentality that we can actually work towards and embody. But I mean, right now, I'm just talking about just living our day-to-day lives. Most things that affect us and drag us down don't have anything to do with us, and they don't really impact us. A lot of the things that society is getting upset about is that their perceived oppressor is not giving them the rights that they want to be who they want to be in lots of different ways. And they can't, the government doesn't have the power to give you the life that you want. Like, really, if you want to love yourself and be comfortable in your own skin and do what you want in your life and live your life the way that you want to, the government can't control that. They can't strip that away from you. Now, they could strip a legal aspect of it, like so I'm just going to use this as an example, and I'm going to use like specifically gay marriage, but you can expand it to other topics around this area, and you can expand it to any topic. It doesn't have to do with sexual preference or identification and as who you are or anything like that. It doesn't have to apply to that. It's just a damn good example of this, so that's why I'm using it. Okay. Another example is Valentine's Day. You don't have to celebrate Valentine's Day. If you don't believe in Valentine's Day, just don't celebrate it. You don't have to celebrate Christmas if you think it's a bad idea. People get so upset. Maybe that's a better example. Like, people get so upset, like, oh my God, we can't say Merry Christmas. It's like, says who? Well, Walmart changed their signs, so now we can't say Merry Christmas. What does Walmart changing their signs have to do with you? If you want to say Merry Christmas, say Merry Christmas. If somebody gets offended, that's fine. Let them get offended. Who cares? You're just walking around trying to be nice. in a way that aligns with you. Nobody can stop you from doing that. And we act like these external forces are, no, they're taking Christ out of Christmas. Like, how? Isn't Christ in your heart? How is somebody passing a law going to take Christ out of your heart? Yours. Don't worry about everybody else. Because they can't take Christ out of their heart either. But we give away our power, and then we get upset that people don't do what we want them to do with it. It's like, well, then don't hand over your power. So the other example I was going to use was like gay marriage. Like, there has been gay people on this planet since the beginning of time. So, like, now I understand the oppression and all that stuff. I get all that part. That's not the part that I'm talking about. Okay. The part that I'm talking about is the fact that, like, if there have always been gay people, and there has, so there have been gay people who lived a wonderful life filled with love before it became legal to have gay marriage. Okay, well, then how did they do this? Well, they lived the life that they wanted to live. They learned to love themselves. They found a partner that loved them. They created a life together and lived a wonderful life before it was legal. Just because, like, we act like legal is the end all be all. There's tons of laws that are on the books that are immoral and wrong. So we're going to live by those? They're immoral and wrong. There's, some of the examples. Well, I'm not even going to get into that aspect of it. My point is that we need to find a way to live our lives the way that we want to live our lives, and stop handing our power away over to larger things. I understand that it's cool when things become legal, and it feels like it's more acceptable and stuff. And that's great. And we can actually even keep working towards those things as a society. And as individuals, I'm not saying that we should just abandon everything and nobody should have any rights, and those who don't have rights just should, tough crap, you don't have rights. I'm not saying that. We can still work towards a society that we want to have, that's inclusive instead of exclusive, and that is loving, unconditionally loving. We can work towards that stuff, but don't put your life on hold. Don't put your love on hold until the government decides to agree with you and say, yes, we will make it a law. No, just live your life the way that you want to live your life anyway. And when the government, once there's enough people doing that, then the government will have no choice but to reflect that back in the laws. This is how change actually happens. This is why we need to stop focusing outside of ourselves. Just stop. And we have so much control over our own happiness. And what we're constantly doing is we're handing that away. And excuse me, that eye's leaking again a little bit. Hopefully I'm getting this fixed next week. But we keep, we're handing away our power to governments and to authorities and to what other people think. And we're handing our power and our happiness away. And this is all, like, how are we going to find unconditional love if that's what we're doing, right? How are we going to be how are we going to be beacons of unconditional love? How are we going to live a life experiencing unconditional love and expressing unconditional love when all our attention is just drawn outside of ourselves? And that's why I kind of did this, began the podcast this way, is to lay the groundwork on like what's pulling us out of all this. It's us giving our power away and our attention away and getting all caught up in our preferences and what other people think and all this stuff. And just let them, that's a big, was it Mel Robbins, I believe is her name, has really good information out there. And I think that her book is really popular right now. And it's a wonderful thing. I mean, we all teach the same stuff, but, she really simplified it and put it into a simple delivery that is resonating with a lot of people. Why? Because this is what we need to do. This is where we are in our spiritual shift. We have to let all these people and institutions that are dysfunctional. We think if we fight and argue with them and get angry enough that things are going to change, and that's not what changes. Let them. Let's just be who we want to be. And if I am who I want to be, and you are who you want to be, and then somebody else is who they want to be, that's how we're going to change the world. And every time, like it seems that whenever you try to give that message, people go, yeah, but it's going to take 51% of people, or it's going to take millions of people, and they're not doing it. So if they're not doing it, why should I do it? And that's exactly what keeps everybody stuck. What keeps everybody stuck is everybody's concerned about what everybody else is doing. And they're not. So we have no control over what everybody else does. None. And that's where all our energy is going, to what we can't control. And unless we can see that, 51% of the people are trying to be loving, then I'm not going to be loving. Oh, well, that's a wonderful way of never becoming loving. Because you can't control what other people are doing. And if everybody thought like you, then nobody would ever do it. Because there is no starting point where 51% of the people are just doing it. That starting point doesn't exist. The way a shift exists, the way it comes into being, is by one person doing it, and then 2 people, and then 3 people, and then 100 people, and then 10,000, and then 1,000,000, one person at a time. But we'll never get there if we're just pointing the finger at what other people aren't doing. We have to stop and focus on ourselves. There was some parable or story or something that I heard a while ago, and it was this forest fire going on, and this bird just kept going back and getting a beak filled with water and dropping it on the fire, and a beak filled with water and dropping it on the fire. And these other animals were like, what are you doing? Like, you're never going to stop this fire from doing that. And the bird was like, well, I'm not worried about stopping the fire. I'm just trying to do my part. So the bird wasn't attached to an outcome. It wasn't going like, well, unless I can see how this is going to play out and how it's going to work, then why bother? Why waste my time doing the right thing? Do you understand what that's really the key? Why waste my time doing the wrong thing? Oh, I'm sorry, doing the right thing. Why waste my time doing the right thing? This is how we view it. We go, well, I'm not going to waste my time becoming loving if 51% of the people aren't doing it. Huh? How is becoming loving wasting your time? I mean, it sounds good on a meme, but does that actually make sense? Have you actually thought about what that means? That means that you're going to live your life not being love, and then therefore experiencing more negativity, more suffering, hurting more people, more people hurting you, you're going to choose to live your life like that because 51% of the people aren't doing it. And that's not a waste of time. Living your life suffering and causing suffering and receiving suffering is not a waste of time because everybody's doing it. And that, it's not a waste of time to become more loving. I don't give a crap if 51% of the people are doing it or they're not. It's not a waste of time. It's very fulfilling. Just you doing, that's how it works. Just you living a more fulfilling, loving existence gives you a better life. Not becoming a doormat, because that's another excuse that people use. Oh, I'm very loving and kind and everybody craps on me. No, that's not being loving and kind. That's being a doormat. That's two different things. Love is strong, the strongest energy in the universe. Boundaries are aspects of love, not enabling people to continue bad behavior is an act of love. So love is not weak. Love does not get crapped on. Love does not mean you allowing yourself to be abused. That's not what love is. That's not what unconditional love is. Unconditional love in a situation like that where there's abuse says, you know what? I'm not going to allow your abuse, but I love you. I'm not going to allow your abuse because I love myself. And I'm not going to allow you to abuse me because I love you. Because that's poor behavior. And if I allow you to do it, then that means that you're, however you want to look at it, you're creating negative karma. You are like, people can't treat other people like crap and feel good about themselves and love themselves. They can't run around hurting other people and love themselves. They can't. We are all one. So you can't hurt other people and expect to love yourself. You can't do that. Now, from an outside perspective, does it seem like some people do that? Yeah, it seems like it from an external perspective. These people that just crap on other people and climb the corporate ladder and make hundreds of millions of dollars by stepping on other people and using them. And everybody goes, see, they did it. Yeah, they don't love themselves. Well, they seem pretty happy and they seem pretty confident in themselves. Yep, they do. And they're completely disconnected from who they truly are. And they will suffer the consequences because nobody gets away with this. Nobody gets away with anything in the universe. Whatever you put out, you're getting back. And it could be in another lifetime. It could be just going through life without ever knowing what love is. True love. It could be, it can play out in a lot of different ways. It can play out in misery later on in life. It can play out dying alone. It can play out having no friends. It can play out in a lot of different ways. And usually it's a combination. Don't worry about them. But you don't look at their external and think that they're winning, because they're not. They're winning externally, but they're not winning internally. And that's really what we're doing. Those of us on the spiritual path, if you haven't figured that out yet, please figure it out soon. Because if you're going to compare yourself and be like, oh, well, this person is really rich and powerful, so they're better than me. I'm just this loving example of unconditional love. Whoops. Nobody that reaches a level of unconditional love and really loves themselves looks outside at other people and goes that are externally successful and goes, oh, I wish I had what they had. I would forfeit all this self-love and all this unconditional love that I feel and express and experience on a daily basis, I would flush that down the toilet in a minute if I could just have $1 million. Nobody says that. Nobody living in love would ever trade that for money. This is the concept of Jesus saying that when the man finds this treasure, which is unconditional love, he buried in a field, he sells everything that he has to buy that field. This is the concept, and it's not that we have to be poor. It's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that unconditional love is worth more than all the money in the world. And that's what we need to be focusing on. And then as we experience that, abundance is just a natural expression of unconditional love. So we get the money too, except we don't lose ourselves in the process. If we chase money, we can get money. But if we chase love, we can get love and the money. You got to think bigger, peeps. So it's unconditional love. And what does that look like in our daily lives? It looks at, like the people in the government. Sometimes understanding can help this, like one of the things that I do with people in the government is I look at it and I go, how did they get there? Like, it's easy to just judge their actions, right? And like, I truly believe that, like, let's say you have this idealistic kid that wants to help the world, okay? Wants to help solve world problems, and they decide that they're going to get into politics, and they do, and they get into a local race, and they win, and they probably do some good, and then they start realizing, like, oh, it seems like there's this whole game set up, and if I rub this person's back a little bit, maybe give them a little bit of accolades or something, then I get what I want, and I can help all these people. And wow, that was cool, and really, no harm came of it, and it really worked well. Then they get up into a state level, and then the game gets upped, and then a federal level, and they find out that, like, if they're going to, now all of a sudden they're getting to a certain level, getting to a particular office that they seek, where maybe they still think that they can do real change, make real change, and do real good. Perhaps at some point, I think that goes away. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. I think that they always think that they're doing good for the world. I don't think that goes away. I think even people in the federal governments are really actually think that they're doing good in the world. It's just little by little, what happened is they started playing the game, and they're like, oh, well, I have to, give this person that in order to get that. And why should I suffer along the way? I mean, I should be I'm doing wonderful things for the world, so I should have millions of dollars. So they take their millions of dollars and, in all these different ways, and they do all these, make all these deals and all this stuff. And what they do is they kind of lose track that at some point, like, taking care of people to try to get what you want, the trade gets out of balance. And at some point, and I don't think we should ever do this, because I don't believe that the ends ever justify the means. I think the end is a result of the means. We're not supposed to do wrong things to try to achieve something good. That doesn't make sense. There's no happy destination at the end of an unhappy road. So like, the whole philosophy is wrong, but the philosophy is wrong in a lot of areas in life. This is just a political philosophy. So at some point, what happens is they're making 51% trades and only doing 49% good. And then at some point, they're doing 75% trades and doing 25% good. seemingly. And when you're around that level, really the bad outweighs the good. And then you just live like that for hundreds of years. And it's so out of balance at this point that really I mean, really, when was the last time a world problem got solved? This is because we're not trying to solve world problems. 75% of our energy is going towards making deals and making it seem like we care and all this stuff. So my point is that their perception is that they're actually trying to help, and this is a system, and this is the only way it can be done. And they buy into that belief system. So when I understand that, then I'm like, oh, okay, they're not doing it to be malicious. Most of them aren't. There are some that are trying to do it malicious, but okay, what about the ones doing it malicious things out there? Well, to me, it's, and I won't get into every specific thing, so I'm going to generalize, like Michael Bernard Beckwith talks about this. He says nobody's to blame for doing everything. It doesn't mean that we don't hold people accountable. It's just to understand their motivation in doing the wrong things, right? What's to blame is ignorance. So the example that I just gave is ignorance. They think that they have to do these things to make a positive impact in the world. That's ignorance. That's a wrong way of thinking. It's not actually true, right? So it's the ignorance that is causing it, not the person. So people aren't to blame. Again, do they still need to be held accountable? Absolutely. So, so people are that, like in a governmental sense, when people are doing this, they should be voted out. By who? Well, the people. The people are supposed to be monitoring what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, which we do not do. We just let them do whatever they want to do. And then we sit back and go, oh my God, I can't believe they did that. It's like, why? They've been doing it for hundreds of years, and they're just doing it to another degree now. Oh, they're helping themselves? Oh my God. They've been helping themselves all along. You haven't said anything. You haven't voted them out. Why would you think that they're going to change now? Right. So, but my point is to just have a certain level of understanding about that people are doing these things because for some reason they think it's right. It's ignorant. It ain't right. But for some reason in their head, they're thinking that it is. I mean, even Hitler thought he was right. He wasn't, but he thought he was. He thought he was doing a good thing. So this is how people are just trying to do the right thing. Again, does it mean we don't hold them accountable? Absolutely not. We have to hold them accountable, and we can't allow certain things to transpire in this world. However, seems to be our main focus. I'm going to go take care of them. I'm going to go take care. We're never going to change the world that way. Why? Because it's a perfect reflection of ourselves. We're too concerned. We're out there trying to do, like, all of us are doing the same thing in our daily lives. Okay. And I'll use myself as an example. I am not 100% in the vibration of unconditional love. So you know what? I make mistakes. Sometimes I handle things poorly. And you know what? Sometimes I handle something poorly and it affects somebody else that's in my life. And you know what they're probably thinking when that happens? Geez, Glenn seemed like a nice guy. He does all this work on himself, but he really hurt me. I can't believe he did that. This really hurts me. And then it probably flips into the judgment. He must be a bad person. I guess he's not who I thought he was. Blah, 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 blah. And then they go down that road, and I'm just another example of a bad person. So now there are more bad people in the world. I'm not a bad person, but I'm not perfect. I make mistakes just like everybody else is out there. And you know what? The more I focus on me and doing my work and becoming more loving and more unconditional loving, the less I hurt other people. And the happier that I am and the happier that they are. And that's how change occurs. So but I can't control. I can sit over here and I could give you millions of examples of people doing the wrong thing. And you know what? I'm not going to fix any of them because they're not in my control. Only I'm in my control. So if I focus me on being the best version of me that I can be, focus on unconditional love. So I can look at these people and go, you know what? Okay, I see them doing the wrong thing. That's ignorance. They are a child of God, just like I am a child of God. You know, like the way that I zoom back in and bring it into my real life is I picture my son, right? I love my son unconditionally. Perfectly unconditionally? Probably not, because there are times where I can get upset. And in the past that I've gotten upset. It didn't mean I stopped loving him, but I bet you there was a few times where it felt like that, you know, which was definitely not my implication. But that's just reality. So, but I love him unconditionally. So, like, my son could do the most unimaginable, horrible act capable of man. Like the worst thing man ever did. You know, he could just go kill people randomly or something. Just horrible. You know, something that's extremely detrimental. And I would not support him in his acts. I would, you know, I don't know what I would do in those specifically for a specific action, right? And I don't need to do that, but I don't need to go there. But because that's not what I'm talking about, and each situation is different. So I'm not even going to hypothesize what I might be doing. But what I do know is that I would love him regardless. Would I agree with his actions? No. Would I support him in his actions and help him do them? Nope. Not if they're detrimental. I'm not going to help him do something detrimental. That's enabling. That ain't love, right? But would I stop loving him? Absolutely not. He could never do anything for me to stop loving him. This is the love that God has for us. God never stops loving us, no matter what we do. Might not like some of the stuff we do, might go, ooh, that's, you know, there's a system in place where you put out bad, you're going to get hit with some bad. So I'm not looking forward to seeing you suffer those consequences, but I love you and I'm here for you. And whenever you're ready to stop doing the negative things and turn to love, my arms are going to be wide open. And that's what we can emulate. That's what we can be. That's the unconditional love that we can be. It's just going, hey, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that person doing that thing, but they're a child of God. They have a pure soul inside of them. And the fact that their ignorance, their lack of understanding is making them do something that I disagree with, I have to accept that. I can't control them. I can only control what I can control, and I can control me and what I do. And what I can do is I can love them. I can look at them and say, you know what? There is good inside of them. Maybe they can't access it right now. Maybe they think that what they're doing is a good thing. They obviously do. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it. But they probably think what they're doing is good. It's not. They're not, in my opinion. I'm not God, so I don't know. You know, that's the other thing. We got to be realistic. You know, we harp on these things like we know everything. Like there isn't just good and bad. It just is. And we determine what's good and bad. So like a lot of time, we don't know. Sometimes something negative needs to happen. This is the truth of planet Earth. Sometimes something negative needs to happen to spark something bigger and positive to come. This is why everything in our microcosm, in our lives, if we all experience negative things, we all experience difficulty, we all experience things that are tough. And if we use those things to grow and to turn towards love, then we become more loving. If we use those things to become bitter and close off, then we become more bitter and closed off. So we, in the long run, we determine what's good and what's bad. Why? Because it wasn't the thing, it was how we chose to use it. If we choose to use our difficult circumstances to open up towards love, then in the long run, this thing happening was an asset. I mean, I went through many, many years of turmoil and difficulty through family court with my ex-wife. And it was, I mean, one of the hardest things that I ever went through. And I went through 20 years of alcoholism, and it was still probably the hardest thing that I went through. But I grew through it. I grew through it. I can look at somebody that from an outside perspective inflicted the most pain on me and the person I love most in this world. And I can look at her with no resentment, none, well wishes, lovingly. How can I do that? Because I grew through the experience. I opened through it, and I forgave. And I understood that she thought she was doing the right thing. She wasn't, in my opinion, and probably a lot of other people's opinions. The court system's opinions, at the end of the day, they you know, I got custody. So they saw it through my eyes too, eventually. It just took many years for us to get to that point. But so there was a lot of suffering along the way. But I don't harbor resentment towards that. She was like my greatest teacher. You know, it's use it to open and focus on our personal work, and we become more loving. So this is what we do in every situation, in every moment. How can I be love? How can I be loving? How can I view this through love? How can I, you know, it really, okay, here's a great way for you guys to start, okay? Like, if you really want to do some work on this, then depending on the person, okay, you can start with the small, medium, or large. And different people work better in different ways. So you can just try it in each way and see which way works best for you. So starting with the small, what I mean is start with a resentment, something that you don't like, that somebody did or that's transpiring in the world or something like that. It doesn't keep you up nights. It's not that big of a deal. It doesn't really affect you that much, but you just don't like it. That's small. Then it can be medium, something that does affect you, but it's not this huge thing. Or you can look at the biggest things, the most extreme. And quite honestly, I would try that first. If you can, because if it will just speed up your progress. If you can do the biggest thing first, then everything underneath it is going to be that much easier, right? So try the big things first. If you're not capable of doing it, go down to a medium thing. If you're not capable of doing it, go down to a small thing. If you're not capable of doing it, go down to a tiny, tiny, teeny thing, and then work your way back up. It doesn't matter. This work is all worth it. Right? But look at something that really bothers you. Look at the person or the entity or that's doing it, and try to just go, okay, it's their ignorance. Somewhere, for some reason, maybe things that they went through their experiences, for some reason, they think this is the right thing to do. It's not, in my opinion, because I'm not God and I don't know for sure. I don't know anything for sure. But in my opinion, it seems pretty clear that this isn't the right thing. That's their ignorance. They just are looking at it a different way for some reason. They just are. And I can't control that. So I need to accept that. And then I need to find unconditional love for them. I need to practice loving them even though they're doing this type of thing. I need to be able to feel a sense of unconditional love and well-wishing for them even though they're doing this stuff. Because if what they're doing is wrong, then it is not in alignment with their true self. All of us, every single being on this planet has a soul that is perfect, divine. It's not tainted. It's eternal. It cannot be threatened. It cannot be scratched, dented, or damaged. And because of any experience that we have in this earthly lifetime, it's perfect. It's perfect unconditional love. It's perfect. And everybody, every being has that inside of them. It's the foundation. It's the core of what they are. And everybody has that. So love that. Love the fact that they have that in them. Love them as the child of God that they are, because they are just as much as you are. Just as much as you are. They might be confused, in your opinion. They might be looking at things in the wrong way from your opinion. But it doesn't change their eternal nature. It doesn't change the fact that they, just like you, satisfied the creative urge of God. You know, you ever think of that? That's such a beautiful thought. God, you know, I heard it said this way once. You know, God was sitting there one day and he felt this urge and he was just like, oh, I have to create. I just want to create. And then he just went and he with a breath, he just went and created you. And that's how powerful you are. You satisfied the creative urge of God. How beautiful is that? I love telling that story. And you know what? So did they. They satisfied the creative urge of God. So love that aspect of them. We don't have to love what they do. That we don't have to agree with what they do, but we do have to love them because they're part of us. There's only one, you know? And so as you lean into this, you get it back into the bigger and bigger concepts, the concept that we are all one. So when somebody else is like, when we're angry at somebody else, we're just angry at ourselves. You know, it's like let's say you did something, you know, I'm going to use a physical example to wrap this up. Let's say you physically hit somebody, right? So you physically hit somebody and you hurt them. So that would be like cutting off your fist and going like, well, the fist actually hit them or my hand actually slapped them. So I'm going to cut that off and then the rest of me will be good. It's like, it doesn't work that way. Like the anger within you is what caused it. It wasn't your hand. So the anger in the world and the dysfunction in the world caused these poor behaviors. It wasn't that person. You know, this has been going on for generations to generations. You know, in the movie, The Shack, they did a good job of that. They're like, you know, doesn't it go back to the first people? Doesn't it go back to Adam and Eve, the brokenness? You know, you think because somebody's an adult, they didn't have something happen to them when they were like a dysfunctional adult causing pain. You think that they came from this wonderful, loving scenario and just were loved unconditionally their whole lives and then just decided to choose inflicting pain on others for no apparent reason? Of course not. They grew up in a dysfunctional world with dysfunctional people that caused pain and suffering. And now, they're causing pain and suffering. Again, doesn't mean that they're not to be held accountable, but it's just for us to understand, like, somebody did it to them, and know who did it to them? The people before who did it to them. And know who did it to them? The people before who did it to them. Like, this goes back thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of years. This brokenness. So who's really to blame? It's our ignorance. Our ignorance is to blame. For some reason, people think that it's the only way that they can be happy, or it's the only way that they can achieve what they think they need to achieve, or it's the only way. They think that. Are they wrong? Yes, most of them are wrong. But it doesn't mean that they have no soul and they're not a child of God and they're not equal to us. They deserve unconditional love, just like we deserve unconditional love, even though we make mistakes. That's what unconditional love is. Okay, so if we can just get kind of intellectual with that and learn to accept, forgive, understand, have compassion for whatever we need to do for other people's lines of thinking that are causing them to do all these horrible things, and then we can send our love to them through to their loving center, to their loving core, to their internal, beautiful, loving self that they truly are underneath all that dysfunction. That's how we experience unconditional love for everyone. Okay. So hopefully that helps people. Thank you for listening. Go be as loving as you can. And my mouse isn't working again. Okay. I will wrap it up for today. Thanks for listening. Peace. Be love. All right. And